well, welcome back to another edition of Inside BBI with John and Eric. I'm John McDevitt, and with me, of course, as always, senior editor of Big Blue Interactive, Mr. Eric Kennedy. And Eric, although you don't have a vacation background, it's almost time to go on vacation if you're a Giants fan.
Yeah. It wasn't good. It was, I don't know. You remember when we were making our predictions and I said, what if we only have 6 points by halftime? I was I was a little too optimistic about that. And then I said later on, I said, what if this is a game where we finish with 19 points? And you just shook your head. And again, I mean, we got a lot to talk about. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah, we'll get to. I don't know if you have anything in particular. I have a Edwin's Oast Brew apple cider donuts. I'm going with this one. So we're recording this earlier in the day. So
I had an anniversary dinner last night, so I'm a little boozed out. So
nice.
I've got my water here right now.
Well, happy anniversary then.
Yes, thank you.
Congrats to you guys. So yeah, let's talk about it. We don't need to break down the piece, like game by game or piece by piece throughout the entire game. It's been talked about. If you haven't read Si's review on bigblueinteractive.com, I highly recommend reading Si's review. There's so many things in there that I wholeheartedly agree with. But let's start with, I don't know.
Before you say that, you and I were talking about at one point, maybe doing live broadcasts.
Yes.
See our reaction to the games. And if we had done a live broadcast of this game, I would have sounded like, I don't know if you ever watched Deadwood. I would have been sounding like Al Swearingen.
Oh my God.
Throughout the entire game. It would have been expletive this, expletive that. So I don't know if the live broadcast with us would be a good, well, maybe people would like that.
Depending on the makeup of your household, if you're watching Deadwood, it's like volume at 35, volume at 10, volume at 35, volume at 10, and it's like constant. Yeah, I know where you're going with this. I recorded a quick video after the game was over. I put it as a short. I threw it up there. It's been viewed over 800 times.
Okay.
And the title of the video was, "Holy shit, this Giants team is trash." I could not believe. Here we were talking about stuff. And again, I sound like a lunatic. I gave them 30 plus points. I thought we were going to have to score 30, like, legitimately, because I thought the Bengals would get some points for sure. I thought, you're only going to be able to hold them down so much. This is one of the most prolific offenses in the NFL so far this year, even though they haven't been winning games. They haven't been winning games because their defense has been giving up at a high clip. They literally had scored, like, I think it was like third or fourth most points in the NFL. I have to go back and look through the first 5 games.
Yeah.
Their defense gave up more points. And our Giants offense, and God help it, scored 7 points.
26th ranked defense, and we had 0 points at halftime.
And that's being generous, quite frankly, because the only reason they were probably 26th is they played the Patriots in week 1, who had no offense. So that probably helped a little bit because they were giving up points at an epic clip. Like, as soon as they took the lead with the Ravens, Derrick Henry's running 50 yards down the field on the next possession. We couldn't do anything. Nada. And I know people keep saying, and I'm glad Cy pointed out, that we should have run more. And I know you going into the game, you thought we should run more. And I said, actually, you got to stick to kind of what you're doing better, which is our pass blocking against their poor pass rush. They got to Jones a couple of times. We still held them out for the most part, but we're struggling a little bit with Thomas all of a sudden. We can get to that.
Yeah.
But Jones missed so many passes. It's not that their defense was good that night. It's just they seemed to know what was coming. They literally, we ran a lot of straight down the field, then parallel routes, so guys would turn outside. So we were running parallel across a line. You could see their safeties were not that far back. On the one particular 4th down pass where he's throwing to Robinson and it gets knocked down, if you look at the play, Johnson, the tight end, is going past. They're playing with an outside corner is covering kind of 2 spots. He's playing a little bit of a zone. Safety's playing a little further back. Robinson comes out with Johnson. Slayton goes out to the right. Now, or out to the left. Should Jones have thrown it to Slayton? More than likely, yes. But when you look at the play, you could see that Jones has made up his mind by the time the ball was snapped. He was going to Robinson. And
Yeah.
and you can tell because look at the safety as Johnson runs past where Robinson is now turning, and he has a defender that needs to pick up and come to him. The safety doesn't even bother to run to Johnson, who's coming straight down the middle. He makes a beeline going towards Robinson. They knew what was coming. They knew Jones was not going to throw to anybody, but he was going right there. And that's the thing that should be alarm bells should be going off for Brian Dabol. And I'm having a real hard time reading into some of the things he says. There's nothing positive that he says. Even it sounds like positive, and I can get to that later. But when you see it, that's when I talked about we coach scared. You're doing things so much to protect your quarterback, to keep it in a relatively confined area of the field. All you've done is invite everybody in, and they know what's coming. So anyway,
I
that
don't know if
play was
that's
up.
Dable though. I mean, is that Dable or is that Jones? Look,
Well, I think it's Dayball
applaud you.
because of Jones. I think it's Dayball because of Jones. I think he's protecting him, and they're calling all this intermediate
But
stuff.
if he was protecting him, they would have run the ball more. So,
I don't think
there is an upside. We talked about it earlier in the week. Last week. There is an upside to putting more of the game on Jones because you find out one way or the other. And again, people who have been watching the show are going to say, "My God, Eric's going back and forth, back and forth." Well, as I said last time, I'm reacting now to the games that we see out of Jones, and so he had a good game against Seattle, but I'm done. I mean, this is he just sucks the life out of you, and that's what I was thinking about this after the game, immediately after the game. Sometime we should do a podcast right after the game, like the minute it ends, and all I could think was that night was as I was updating the website was this team and specifically Jones just sucks the life out of you. There is no joy right now in watching this team. They give you a snippet here and there, like the Seattle game, that get your hopes up. Oh boy! And then this crap happens, and we have to stop having these. We have to stop attaching ourselves to these glimmers of hope because he's not. And I know where you're going to go with this because of your picture requests, but and I agree with you, but he's not the answer. This is stupid at this point. I was holding out hope that maybe again he might have been on a second rebirth here, but this game was a disaster for him on so many levels, and it's time. This is, but I'm afraid of is Dabol is now going to scapegoat Daniel. So the longer Daniel stays in there and if the Giants lose, he can say, well, I'm stuck with this quarterback. The problem with that argument, of course, is Dabol and Shane and Mara are the ones that hitched their wagon to this guy. So they have nobody to blame but themselves at this point, and they may sink with this, and that's on them, and they did it to themselves. We'll see what happens. But as Sai said, this is, and you and I have talked about this. This is a good enough team to be competitive if they got decent quarterback play, and we saw that with the Seattle game. But you just can't do that. I mean, he's making mistakes that rookies make, and he's in a 6th year. I mean, I'm done. I'm out. I tapped out at this point. I don't care if he lights it up against Philadelphia or not. I'm done. It's time to move on.
Yeah, so there's a couple things there. Real quick. So if you see behind me, the picture on on my left is September 2020. That's the opening game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's COVID season. First game of the season. Jones rolls to his left. He's getting pressure. And that's Bud Dupree right there. As he goes to throw, Dupree's in his face. So he's just trying to chuck it. And what they said was he was trying to throw it out of bounds. He was just trying to throw it out of the end zone. Okay. Stupid. But that's, 2020. You were drafted in 2019.
Yeah.
2024. In the picture right behind me, y'all saw it. Y'all saw the game. It's a stupid ass play call to begin with. I hate it's not the fact that you called the play, it's what the play actually is, leaves you're unbelievably limited, especially if you don't have God forbid, I'm going to say something that most people use, and I hate it when they do. But if you have a quarterback that doesn't process information quickly, this is a bad thing because then he sticks with what the play is originally designed for, even when the evidence says this is probably not the way to go. So the second you had a guy screaming open into the flat and you saw the defense and the rush is starting to come through, you either throw it to the flat or you throw it into the ground somewhere or you take the sack. Not Jones. Hell no. He tries to rear back and his idea was, I'm going to throw it out of bounds. Keep in mind, where you are on the field and drifting backwards with a rush, that's a pretty decent throw, even from 20 yards, to throw it out of the back of the end zone, which is now where he's supposedly trying to do it. But if you watch the play, he's also now turning and throwing back across his body. So it's not a straight line 20. It's at least 25 to 30 yards in that direction. I'm like, what the hell are you thinking? And the first day that popped into my mind was September 2020. And if you have not improved in 5 freaking years of decision making, because this isn't the 45-yard line down by 35 points and you're doing the best you can to get anything. This is in the red zone where you have a chance to really get your team back in this game. And you just and if I hear one more Giant fan argue, because I saw it on Twitter over and over again, well, it turned into no points for the Bengals. I don't give a shit if
no, Christ, no! It's the difference in the ball game. What's the difference in the ball game?
There is such a tangible thing as momentum and attitude. And the second that happened, you could see the stadium was deflated. The sidelines, my God, Jones shows no freaking emotion no matter what. Every time you put a camera on him, the guy looks like he looks like walking depression.
Well, but he's a good interview. He's just like Eli Manning, so ownership loves him. Look, I credit you, number one, for your memory of the Steelers game. I put crap like that out of my mind now. I can remember the good years. I can even remember some of the bad years, but the last 12 years now is like a blur to me. So when you asked for that picture, I'm like, I don't even remember that moment. But he should remember that moment. He should have learned his lesson from that moment. He didn't learn his lesson from that moment. And all I could think was this: national television, people turning the game on again to see, football, all the other games are over. The football junkies want to watch a little bit more. They're thinking, oh Christ, this this Daniel Jones guy is on the air again now, and I'm gonna subject myself to watching this dork. And so what does he do? He does that. And everybody around the country was laughing at that play. They were laughing, and they should laugh at that play. If that is a stupid, idiotic play. And of course Daniel Jones did it. That's why I'm done. I'm done. Because you can't defend this anymore at this point. It's not a one-off. As you just pointed out, the same exact play basically happened earlier in his career, and he didn't learn anything from it. So yeah. I applaud you. The second thing I applaud you is for breaking down the specifics on all these breakdowns and saying, this guy was open and this route was run and all that stuff. I'm looking more at, and this is maybe we compliment each other on this show better today, because I'm just looking at the big picture and going, bench him. I'm done. Bench him. I said this in a previous episode when he was struggling earlier this year again, before the Seattle game. I said the sooner they bench him, the better it is. And even if the guys behind him are worse, it gives me something to look for. I don't want to watch them against Philadelphia this weekend, because it's going to be at home, and he's going to play like a little bitch again, and we'll probably score 3 points in the game. And I am not interested in watching that, but I have to, because I run a Giants website. That's how down I am. My entire life I've been a Giants fan, and I can't stand this shit anymore. It's 0 points at halftime against the 26th ranked defense. And I was joking last week about if we had scored 6 points, and that was a joke.
Keep in mind, this is a team that scored 30 plus points in multiple games. The Giants held them to 10 for the bulk of the game. And quite frankly, if the Giants had done anything offensively, I don't think they would have gone beyond that 10. They were ready to fold. Overall, the Bengals weren't doing anything. For all the talent they had at wide receiver, for the fact that we have a young and somewhat injury filled secondary and guys we don't even know if we think they're the guy, but they're playing right now. Flott is playing, McLeod's playing, Banks is still kind of, a guy who's always near the ball but doesn't seem to knock it down or intercept it. So we're overmatched supposedly there. We've got Kayvon's out, so we're kind of short-handed up front. They had 10 points. They had 10 points. The worst part about a lot of this, and this is another thing that people need to understand, I don't want to hear those who want to don't try to find a positive in something that's not positive. Like, find a positive in legit positive things, but don't make something up. If you don't really understand the situation, and I'm going to give the specific.
Are you talking about Jones? Are you talking about
I'm
Jones?
talking about in general. I'm talking about in
Okay.
general with the Giants.
Okay.
And I'm going to give the specific in a second. But when you don't know and you say shit that you sound like you do, it sounds stupid after a while. The Giants of 1990, if you don't remember that team at all, but you bring it up, they controlled the line of scrimmage. They controlled the clock. Why? Because they were an older team and they needed to. They had a very physical offensive line. They had a very physical running game. They had 3 essentially blocking tight ends because Mark Bavaro was playing on one knee. But we had guys, Bob Morosco was our third tight end who was a former offensive lineman. That's what we had, and we pounded people into submission. And we had a defense, as Mark Collins said, he thought that defense was even better than the 86 defense. So we had a team that could control the clock, and it ate people up. Why? Because that's what we wanted to do. The Giants now, by using 10, 11, 12, 14, 16 plays, isn't because we're dominating anything. It's because we can't fucking make more than 4 or 5 yards at a time. It's taking 4 downs to get a first down multiple times. This is a shitty offense that is requiring perfection because their quarterback can't pass the ball down the field. He can't move off where he needs to. He doesn't lead people. And if you go back to the video from this summer, you and I talked about it, and we both said, in fact, this is when my office was flipped. The camera was facing the other direction. I had 2 big windows behind me. Go back and look at that video where I said the biggest problem that Jones has is he takes passes to guys on 3rd and 7, throws it behind him. What could have been a 10-yard gain ends up barely being 6 because they got to stop. They got to reach back. So then you start hearing, well, the receivers dropped the ball. No, it's a shitty pass. Hit the guy in stride. If they
he was doing 2 things. He was doing exactly what you were talked about in that earlier video. His passes were off the mark, but he was doing exactly what other critics have long said. And to be fair to him, in the other game, he did look to a second receiver at times, but in this game, he didn't. He decided where he was going to go with the football, and there were so many plays in this game when you rewatch the plays that he had somebody open, and he never even looked in their direction, and including on critical down and distance situations where they needed to get a first down. And it's like, there's a guy wide open right there. Don't you see him? So again, I'm not expecting him to be perfect with that. That happens. I saw Rodgers do that last night on that interception. He had a guy open underneath. So everybody does this, but Jones does it all the time. So it's what you're talking about. When he did throw, the ball was off the mark, but a lot of times he didn't throw where he should have thrown. So, and the other big thing is this, and this is what you just talked about too. The longest play we had last night was 15, or on Sunday was 15 yards. 15 yards. Now, you can't win like that. I mean, you have to be perfect. You have to be perfect.
Sorry, I don't mean to cut, but just to back up. No. Just to back up your point, though, don't anybody bring up the 56-yarder that got called back. It was a 7-yard pass that he caught and took off. That's not the same thing. That's still relying on pinpoint accuracy, getting through and beating the defenders because they're all gathered there. They play up. They play within about 15 yards of the line of scrimmage, knowing that we're not going to run anything deep. And you can blame it on Hyatt for being soft because he is. He's as soft as tissue paper. You might be more positive on him than I am.
He's losing me at this point. Yeah,
he is a very weak player, and he needs to get his head out of his ass if he thinks he's going to stay here any longer. Yeah. That pass play to Slayton though was it's basically a microcosm of what has to happen. It has to be perfect. But if you look at Jones multiple times, where it looks like the defender made a really good play, It's not a really good play. They're right there, but Banks is right there in a lot of plays too. But where's the ball usually? It's usually in the receiver's hands in front of him. Where was the ball to Slayton on one that got knocked down? He's reaching over his back shoulder, moving across the field. So Jones sees the guy, and instead of leading him, he throws to where he's going to be right in front of him. But the receiver's running fast enough that the ball's just behind. Defender knocks it down. You hit him in front, that's a first down. But he doesn't do it. It's not one time. It's not two times. It's multiple times a game. But the most
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. The most egregious error was you had Wan'Dale Robinson wide open deep down the field. There is zero reason that you overthrew that pass. He is so freaking inconsistent about long, short, whatever. I don't get it. And if you go back to Seattle, and I know we talked about that, and yes, I know there's going to some people on the side gave me shit because I said that he played a pretty good game, and you said he played a pretty good game.
He did play a good game in Seattle, but that's the problem.
And you can't deny that. But the fact is, though, when he played in a good game there, a lot of stuff became possible and open. At home, there's just something about this dude. The second he takes the field, you look at him, and is it the pressure? Is it mental? I don't even know anymore.
It's mental.
I think he expects to fail.
If you want a quarterback who has trouble scoring touchdowns, but is a super nice guy and falls apart completely at home for half your schedule, Daniel Jones is the guy for you. He's your quarterback. He's great. I mean, enough is enough. It's just like I keep saying, it sucks the life out of you. And I warned people about this. Not that in my opinion matters. I warned people about this last year about if they go into the season with him with no other options, and here we are, and it's like the Seattle game didn't even do it for other people. They sucked you and I back in because you and I were like, we were like, they've got a chance to get the 3-3 here. The coming back to them. But you know what? The bulk of the Giants fans have already checked out. So, the site's been kind of slow, and the baseball threads are great, but they're not paying attention to the Giants, and they're the smart ones. We're the dummies. We're still.
The problem that I have with a lot of it is you can't have a logical conversation with anybody because everybody gets very entrenched in their opinion, and it's not right or wrong per se. Because, and again, I'll stand on what I said during the summer, and you and I were even a little bit different. You thought there was still. I said he's not the quarterback next year. I feel like they've already made up their mind. Now, what's throwing me slightly is we have seen there has yet to be. There's been some glimmers here and there of like he can be, but it's always extremely managed. Even in the Cleveland game where things were really going our way for a while, all of a sudden the wheels started to come off. And when they start to come off, he struggles. Now, the one thing that I need to put more piece into because I didn't is the fact that he almost threw one of those just chuck it up interceptions in Cleveland. If it's not for Malik Neighbors, same thing happens.
Yeah.
There's something about at this point, so we could beat a dead horse.
Yeah, we are being a dead horse. We probably could talk about other things. We're on the same page. I don't think you have to be
brain
insane
dead
at this point to be still with Daniel Jones at this point. Not insane's too strong a word. I don't know what the word.
You're a masochist.
I don't want to insult people who, even though I'm infamous for doing that. But you got to be
Yeah.
There's no defense at this point.
Yeah, your favorite movie must be 50 Shades of Grey. You're a masochist. You're looking to get beat every weekend because that's pretty much how you feel. So we'll switch to other stuff, but I'm going to say, I told you I was going to say this, and this is what I would do. I said this a few weeks ago that if certain things go a certain way, this is how it's going to have to go. And now I feel that way. The Giants are pretty much, I feel you're now locked in, and it's not Drew Lock. You need to take Tommy DeVito from the third and the first. It's not because I think DeVito is a great quarterback. I don't know what he is. I know that he could be a good backup. He certainly played okay. Is he any worse than Jones? So here's the thing, right? I don't want to give one person too much credit, but he says it all the time. So Go Terps brings up all the time, do you want 6 empty wins or whatever? And I keep saying, you got to start winning at some point. That being said, I'm not thinking of this as a change to win. I'm thinking this as a change to prove whether or not another quarterback could actually function in Dabol's offense If it's
Mhm.
really Dabol's offense is the only thing that's even keeping Jones remotely relevant, then a different quarterback can come in and have the same sort of success, if not more. They might not run as much, but I got a feeling Tommy DeVito is going to make some of those passes. And if you protect him, which I think our offensive line can, then he doesn't have to be great. He just needs to be average. He just needs to be barely average. But you know what I would see from that? The
Hmm.
fans would be freaking excited. I
Mhm.
would be happy. What do you see when Jones takes the field? When the Bengals took a 7-0 lead, and we're going to get to that crazy ass how that came about. But they took a 7-0 lead. Jones comes on the field, and the Giants go a couple plays, and then they have to punt. What inspiration does that bring to your fan base when they go, holy shit, once again, you took the field, you gave the ball right back because you couldn't do anything. We have scored a grand total, I believe now it's 6 points in our home games
Well,
in the first quarter. In the first quarter, 3 games, 6 points. Are you
well, and I
kidding me?
want to give credit to the fans in this game. They stayed in it. They were loud. They were loud to
Well,
the
it's the
end.
defense. It's the defense.
I know, but I give credit to them. They didn't, in the first game at home, and they were like, oh, from the very beginning. And this one, they stayed in it and they were
But
loud.
imagine
So
though.
what I'm saying is, they we're not giving them
I
anything
know.
to cheer. The Giants aren't giving them anything to cheer about. I mean, so I've said for again, if you go back 2 or 3 weeks when we were doing this, I said I would bench Jones sooner than later. Then the Seattle game came and again fooled me for uh, a week.
Well,
But I said bench Jones before. I'm back to benching Jones for good. I don't think he should ever take another snap. I would be thrilled. Today's Tuesday. I would be thrilled if tomorrow during the press conference, the first thing out of Dabol's mouth is we're making a switch at quarterback. My concern is I don't think he's going to do that because it's as I mentioned earlier in the video, it's a crazy out for him to basically say I'm stuck with this guy at quarterback. It gives some job security. But again, I would be there in the press going, but you guys signed this guy. You tied your horse to him. So
right,
I would
right.
look, I right now I have nothing to base this on than faith, but feel pretty strongly right now that Jones is not even the best quarterback on this roster. Now,
I would agree. I would agree.
so
I would agree.
I'm comparing Jones to rookie green as grass, Tommy DeVito from last year, and the league is filled with quarterbacks who flash as a rookie and go on and be absolute garbage. And DeVito may be like that, but I know DeVito will take shots downfield. Like you said, he'll get the fans a little bit excited. He'll give me something to wait. Even if he comes in and he struggles, he's got a built-in excuse a little bit because he is a young guy who's hardly played. Jones doesn't have that excuse anymore. So I would rather just from a personal standpoint of just being a fan, I just want to see something that will interest me. Jones doesn't interest me. I'm done. He can't play at home because he goes full whatever. He can't handle the pressure. He's broken. He's broken mentally with that. We've talked whether he's broken physically. I don't know, but I do know he's broken mentally. He plays like crap at home and he treats the end zone like it's something he can't touch. So I mean, it's just I'm so
The
done with it.
red the red flag, and I'll I'll take as much I'll take as much grief about this because I should have thought of this too. I should have said this. I didn't because I don't know. Maybe I'm too busy trying to. There's a lot of things about the league though that it is still open for the Giants. So I'm not gonna change my tune on that part. The East has come back. There, it's open. I think all you gotta do is put in a different quarterback, and I think we're at least 3-3.
Look at that!
But
Look what
but
happened this weekend.
right,
Everybody in the NFC East lost except the Eagles, and they lost
and they should have lost. They
and
should
that
have
was a
lost.
horrible game that the Eagles won. I mean, it's an other year where the Giants have a legitimate shot. Not this doesn't happen every year because there have been some really good Eagles teams and there's been some really good Cowboy teams. But in the last 12 years, there have been some seasons where the division was a train wreck and the Giants were part of that train wreck and they couldn't even get to like 9-7 to win the
All
division.
right.
Everybody else was like 6-10 or worse. And here we are right now in one of those years where the division's there for the taking and nobody wants it. And we're one of those teams. And we're probably the worst of the group now because our
Oh, sure.
quarterback is so bad. I mean,
The,
as bad as Dallas got annihilated on
yes, Detroit.
Sunday, we lost to them at home. I mean, and again, because our quarterback can't throw the ball down the field.
So
No, put DeVito in. I'm
the
done.
the red flag that I should have seen is the fact that the Lions, they basically, in fact, I believe Goff did not have an incompletion in the game against the Seahawks.
Right.
We still only scored 20. Let's be honest. We only scored 22, 23 until we block a field goal and then we don't kick the extra point, which I still think is odd that we didn't even bother. It's stupid thinking, but whatever. Just to keep us from scoring 30. You think from a mental standpoint, it would have been nice to cross the 30 mark, but whatever. So technically our offense only put up 23 and we let them back in the game because our offense didn't kill them when they could have. Detroit, when they had the chance to kill Dallas, they absolutely did. And they didn't stop until it was late in the game that they didn't stop trying to score. The Giants,
they were playing with them. They were humiliating them.
Oh my God, they absolutely were. You got to be careful about that though. That karma comes back on you later.
Yeah, it does.
The Giants continue to try to do things, but again, it takes so many things to be right that one thing being wrong derails it. So the thing that you just said, though, that I want to bring back, because again, it was mentioned on the site that I said on the last show, the East had come back and they were still in it, and that's what management might still see even now. None of that is not true, and none of that has changed, even at 2-4.
Right.
You know what? You know what the difference is about all of that, though, is everybody else has come back, but the anchor that keeps us from getting back into that is the guy who's our quarterback.
Well, of course. That's our whole point.
That's why I feel like you go to DeVito. You don't go to Locke because Locke is Jones light. He just brings a different thing, but who cares? We're not looking to see if these guys are going to be the quarterback in 25. You're looking to get this team because you've got a defense that's playing pretty well. We're going to get healthier as the season goes, hopefully. Defensively,
we don't know about with Andrew Thomas.
No. But I'm only talking
Yeah.
defense. Only talking defense.
Okay.
Kayvon's going to come back. Hope in the near future. Our secondary guys should start to get a little bit healthier. Get a little bit. Phillips is going to get his feet, really more entrenched. He's a rookie. Newman's a rookie. They're going to have seen things. We're hopefully going to develop and get a little bit better there. Some of our competition coming up, they have a lot of issues. There's different teams that have a number of issues. A guy like DeVito could win a number of games and really keep you in it. Now, does it matter? People are going to say, does it matter? Well, guess what? There isn't a cut and dry guy's going to be number one pick in the draft next year. And even if it is, we're not going to end up number one in the draft. I can tell you that right now. We won't be number one in the draft. So I don't really give a shit about the draft right now. Worry about the draft after the season's over. I do think we have to find a quarterback, whether we sign somebody, trade for somebody, or draft somebody. The guy who's going to be the quarterback at 25 is not on the team right now. But the guy that I want the rest of this season, unless he gets hurt, is I want DeVito as the quarterback, lock the backup. Jones to be third. Now, I'm going to ask you, Eric, if Dabol is coaching for his job, one, do you think he sticks with Jones because he thinks that's the only way? Either Jones fails and he can blame Jones, which again, shouldn't absolve him from the blame.
Right.
Or B, that Jones is their best opportunity. Caveat, if you think Dabol still has been told he is the coach next year, that they're not holding a lot of stuff against him, then what would be the reason to keep Jones in the game? Because
I don't know what they're doing.
If he gets hurt, we're in trouble.
So I don't know. So I think what's going on is this. I think they see the division like you see the division, which is correct, that it's winnable if they had decent quarterback play. And they probably think, for whatever reason, that Jones gives them the best chance to win. Now, if they think that, again, if DeVito could come in or Locke could come in, and I wouldn't automatically discount Locke. I mean, I would rather go to DeVito, but I just want to change. I'm
Sure.
I'm just done. If they go to those guys and they play worse, I can accept that because I know I've come to the conclusion that Jones isn't it. So I'm like, we're wasting time, and the risk here, to touch on what you're asking about, is there is a gamble, there is a risk for Dabol in this, that he could lose the team because they may get to the point where, like, we can't, we've all seen it, not just with the Giants, when a team has decided that the quarterback is holding the rest of the team back. And the players aren't stupid. They're more intimately tied to this than any fan out there is. So they go to work every day, and there's gonna come a time, if this continues, where the locker room is gonna split on this.
Oh,
So there
absolutely.
is and that's another way you can lose a coach, is if he loses the locker room. So you don't think just about 2024, you're thinking about 2025. Do the players have faith in the coaching staff and the organization to make a correct decision here? So I think my fear, in a roundabout way, I'm rambling here, but in
No.
a roundabout way, I think my fear is they're sticking with Jones because they're playing. They still think there's a chance that he can keep them in this, but they're also, in the back of their mind, he gives them a little bit, like I said earlier, he gives them a little bit of an out, a get out of jail free card, because they can say, we don't have anybody at quarterback. That could be, we were stuck with Jones. The other guys that really weren't options. So, next year we'll be fine when you get us when we have a real quarterback. That's my fear. Me as a fan, and me as somebody, and I'm not in their shoes, so it's easy for me to say this. I would just move on to quarterback right now, because I know Jones isn't the answer. I don't want him getting hurt with the injury clause kicking in. I don't want to lose the team, and I just want to bring someone. And I wanted to see what you said earlier. Can Dabol coach? So we know. So some of this stuff so last year, what happened when the other two quarterbacks came in? They started throwing the football down the field. And that wasn't the coaches all of a sudden changing the playbook. It was the same plays. The quarterback that was behind center now was saying, I'm going to throw deep. So that's what I want to see.
Right.
So,
So a couple things. One, for everybody who's watching, feel free to comment. Who do you want to be the quarterback going forward? Do you stick with Jones? Do you go to Locke, or do you go to DeVito? I'm going to go on record saying I want it to be DeVito, jump Locke. There's no benefit to playing Locke, not because I think DeVito is better than Locke, or Locke isn't as good, or whatever that might be. It's DeVito is a guy that could technically be the quarterback next year with a rookie, that if the rookie isn't ready to go, if that's the route we end up going in, then you can kind of play DeVito for a while until the rookie's ready. He's also could be a guy who could just surprise you, that if enough talent's around him, right? That's the whole argument we made for Jones. If he just had a number one, if he just had an offensive line, if he just had a running game, if he just had a tight end, then the argument stays the same for DeVito, right? So I want to see what he can do. I don't think he's great. I don't know that he's not good, though. I don't know that he's not good enough, because I saw him do some things last year on a horribly bad team, by the way. Our offensive line was crap.
right.
I mean, come on, Justin Pugh came off the couch to start at guard, and that was an improvement. So
Right.
we have a much better offensive line. Let DeVito play. Neighbors comes back, and then you put Jones third, and that's it. He's not coming back. He's Zach Wilson. You basically sit him there. He can't get hurt. You can't eat all that money for next year. I don't understand. If you're not watching this dude thinks he's a fullback when he starts running. He's leading with his head, which is ridiculously stupid. I mean, I give him, he's brave, he's tough. There's no one argues that, but no one ever said the greatest quarterbacks in the NFL were brave and tough. they have great
Oh, in the
arms.
1930s, they did.
Yeah, maybe, but that's where they were basically fullbacks playing quarterback. So who do you want as a quarterback? I want DeVito. I want Jones to be third. I want to see what happens there. And then let's see. So the next thing before we get to the defensive side, because we'll cover some of that stuff, I just want to ask you, here we are. We've seen today, Davante Adams gets traded to the Jets, which, God love you, Jets. The de facto general manager is Aaron Rodgers. I mean, come on. He threw Mike Williams under the bus so bad, and then doubled down on it again today with Pat McAfee, basically saying the interception was on Mike Williams. You've got Amari Cooper traded from Cleveland to Buffalo. So here we are. We're 2-4.
Mm-hmm.
We're
Good
heading
question.
we're heading into Philadelphia. You know that I said this during the summer, and I'm going to say it again. I think the Giants should trade Darius Slayton if there is a market for him, and I believe there would be for teams that need a wide receiver. A Kansas City comes to mind immediately. They need a wide receiver. I say we trade him, and I'll hear, well, yeah, but you're going to lose out on this or that. What am I losing out on? He's not going to be on the team next year. We're not winning games anyway. Who cares? And if Hyatt can't play, well, we're only going to find out if he plays the rest of the season. He's got to improve. He sucks so far, but Slayton to me is a luxury. And this is the mistake we made in 22, but we had a better record.
Mhm,
In 22,
mhm.
we didn't move on from Barkley, but we should have. And everybody keeps talking now. Even now, people throw out there, should we have signed Barkley? And Ryan Dunleavy posted to somebody, yes. And then Pat Leonard was talking about the Giants should have spent the money on. No, there is absolutely no reason you should have signed Barkley other than eat up a bunch of salary cap for a guy that he gets injured a lot. He didn't do much against Cleveland, by the way, with Philadelphia this past weekend. And keep in mind, when he has games where he's carried the ball and catches the ball a lot, he kind of tails off for 2 to 3 games. That's kind of his MO. So for us, it doesn't make sense. We didn't have a quarterback. You don't re-sign Barkley. So I think you trade Slayton. He's a commodity that if we're going to build next year, which at this point, kind of looking like we gotta, he goes. The next one I would be willing to trade, and this is one I'm going to ask you, I would trade Azeez Ojulari as well. If someone asks us for Ojulari, and I'm thinking specifically of Detroit, if they were to come knocking, I'm going to take them for as high a draft pick as I can get, and I'm going to take it. And I want to hear what you have to say, and then I'll tell you why.
I think you're onto something. This is the this is where we have to find out where Joe Shane's head is at. So if you're going to be a realist here, and all right, the division's wide open, but do you honestly, if you're Joe Shane, do you think this team is going anywhere with the situation at quarterback? If he thinks if he thinks they are, then I don't think Joe Shane's the guy. Joe Shane has been relatively cutthroat in the past. He's cut players, he let players walk. He has traded away Leonard Williams. He's done things but there are other times where I wish he would have done something like he should have traded Barkley before he hit free agency, that
Right.
thing. So, but he has shown both sides of this. So I'm operating under the assumption that this year basically is another waste, and they've got to accumulate capital for the quarterback in the draft. And in order to do that, I would be right now selling. So I'm actually glad you mentioned, I'm on board with Slayton. I like him as a player. He's
Sure.
actually now showing that he definitely should be ahead of Hyatt at this point. However, as you said, and even the beat reporters who have been on the show have said the same thing, Slayton's not going to be here next year
Right.
because he's going to go to greener pastures unless for some reason the Giants tell him we believe in you and you're going to be our starter moving forward. We're not going to replace you with either anyone on the roster or anyone else moving forward. Slayton's gone. So I would move Slayton, and Ojulari is one of those players that just every now and then he has a game like he did on Sunday where you're like, damn. So now you got guys on the website going, well, he's outplayed Kayvon, and why do we need Kayvon? I would sell on
Sell high.
Ojulari right now when he's
Sell high.
high before we have a game where he gets abused in run defense again and doesn't do anything as a pass rusher, because that's how his career has been. So that's one thing I said. I try to make a point on the website today and yesterday was we still have this last game played syndrome with fans where they're like, well, Ojulari played great. Well, if you read how he played the game before on the snaps he had, Cy gave him a really bad review because he was actually questioning whether he was physically capable of regaining his form as an explosive pass rusher. Anyways, I'm rambling again. I agree with you. I would put Ojulari out there too. I don't know if anyone would take him, but if somebody offers a decent draft pick for him, I would sell him right now. Now people are out there going to go, great. So then you're left with Boogie and Benton Whitley and these
Sure.
guys. But I'm thinking this year's gone anyways at this point. I need the capital for next year's draft. There are only so many players on this team right now who are tradable, and the two that you mentioned are two of the ones that are out that stick out like sore thumbs to me. I would
So
have to go player by player to see if there are any other, but those are the two right that immediately. I was actually going to bring this up if you didn't bring it up
so
with Ojulari. I would sell high on him. I don't think they'll do it, but because I think they're going to think, well, Kayvon's not here and we need him. Well, I mean, at this point,
for what? To
for
lose?
what? I mean, so we can win, and so we were five and win 5 games instead of four.
But we still lost.
So
That's the thing. So I'll say this, for those who say, and I have not been the biggest fan of what Kayvon has been versus what I thought he was going to be.
right,
Ojulari is not as good as Kayvon Thibodeau, and you can stop that nonsense right now. Look at the game. Ojulari, ever since he bulked up and ever since he had the lower body injuries, he cannot change directions with any kind of speed at all. He got juked a couple of times by Burrow. One time he got juked, but luckily there was other people in the backfield so that he was able to recover and still be part of it. He can't change directions at all. He got totally faked out because he thought Burrow dropped the ball. And that might be so, or you could say he's afraid of driving the quarterback into the ground. That's also possible. Just don't let go of him then. Just hold on to him. I don't know what the hell you thought you were doing, but you let go, you turned around, and we're lucky that Burrow wasn't able to just throw that ball and complete it. That could have been a Vince Young moment all over again.
right.
But
He did play well. I don't want to give him
I'm not
credit
saying
where
he's
credit's due.
not.
He played well.
But he's not. But that's playing well in a game against an offensive line that has struggled, against an offensive tackle that's a big dude, but he is not a big-time pass blocker, isn't a ringing endorsement that you want to go, this is what I can expect going forward. You said it already. What did we get against Dallas? Not much of anything.
Right.
There are other games. You sell high. Come off this game.
That's why I would sell high.
If we play Philadelphia and he goes up against Lane Johnson and Lane Johnson buries him in the running game multiple times and he doesn't get anywhere near hurts because he's just a much different quarterback, then all of a sudden you're going, no one's going to want this dude. He was invisible.
Well, the other thing too is even if he did those things, again, he's another guy who's going to walk.
That's the thing.
So they're not going to resign him. So say Thibodeau's out for 5 more weeks or 6 weeks.
Sure.
And in that time period, Azeez lights up the league. He's not re-signing with the Giants. He's not coming back here. He's not going to be stuck behind those two guys. And the Giants would be anyone signing him to a long-term deal with the injuries that he's had, his lower body injuries, that would scare the hell out of me. So for Azeez he's had multiple issues below the waist throughout his career, and that's the kind of guy you just don't hitch your wagon to. But so I know I interrupted you. I'm sorry, but
no.
If he plays really well, he's like Slayton. He's not going to be here. So,
but the point you just made is a perfect point that everybody else also needs to recognize. His value after the season's over, even if he plays really well, is probably a 1 or 2 year contract with somebody who's willing to but they're not going to front load money to a guy with an injury history. Right. So, but if you're in Detroit who just lost Aiden Hutchinson, and I'm only renting him for the rest of this year,
right?
At worst, I just got another body that I can put out there.
Look what Buffalo just did with the wide receiver. So that's the same thing.
This is the time to do that. So I have a feeling that if we lose to Philadelphia, and that's a preview game we'll talk about on another night. If we lose to Philadelphia, to me, it's sell, baby. In fact, right now, I would even consider it now. If someone called me and said, hey, we're really interested in Darius Slayton, I'd be like, yeah, let's do that. Depending on what they're offering me, let's do that. Or at least I start shopping it to other teams and go, hey, this team is offering me this. What do you got for me?
When you were talking, I don't know if you saw, I was checking Twitter because I wanted to see if there was a Andrew Thomas update. I don't see one yet. They don't have media access until tomorrow, but I was wondering if the reporters got any wind of anything. There's no Mike Garofalo's out there anymore that's going to break any
Yeah, I
story.
know.
If Andrew Thomas is really hurt and he's going to be either down for a while or he's just going to be playing on a bum ankle again and struggling like he
Which
did
we
in
shouldn't
the
do.
game, then that's another reason right now to sell
Yes.
because the offensive because then you're going to thinking, do you have to move Illuminor over to left tackle and does Neal come and play right tackle, or do you go with Azudu at left tackle? And whatever answer is right now doesn't sound really good. So again, we've been competitive because the offensive line has been good. The defense has been keeping us in games. But if you start chipping away at the offensive line, we already had the injury to Thibodeau, then our ability to compete is going to be diminished. So I just worry about, if the doctors came back with the MRI and said Thomas is going to be out a month right now, I would be like selling right now because I think I don't have a lot of faith in Andrew Thomas is missing from this offensive line and the offensive line playing up to the
Well,
level it has. I just want
that brings up another good point. And so I'll ask you, since we already didn't know the answer to this question a minute ago about Dabol and the quarterbacks, report comes in, you need to sit Thomas. He can't play. You're
right,
risking long-term injury and he's going to be limited.
right.
So now you're deciding Illuminor, Neal, or Azudu at left tackle.
Right.
Does that all of a sudden make you go, I gotta put Jones on the bench. I can't have him out there with Josh Azudu at left tackle. And we saw what happened before. We can't risk getting hurt and eating that contract. Does that help you make that decision to go to a different quarterback? It would for me, but I'd already do it.
Probably. I don't know if they think that way. I would, as I said earlier, I would just make the change just because I'm done at this point. So you're asking me, you're asking someone who's already said
Well, I'm
enough.
saying from a Dayball's perspective,
Yeah, I
right?
know.
Because now there's no
understand the
upside.
question. I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer to that. I'm just so done with this. I'm just
So here's a different question that I'll pose
yeah,
to you that goes with this then. Let's say something like that does happen. Thomas is going to be down.
yeah. Or really limited.
Not really. Well, let's say down.
Okay.
Because the purpose of where I'm going to go with this.
Oh, okay.
And I'm asking you your opinion on how you feel about this guy. If the Giants suddenly became buyers because they were worried, oh, we got to get somebody, would you go, I'm done with Joe Shane too? I would. You don't buy. I don't care what happens.
Wait, I missed your
I'm
question.
saying
What's the
if
question?
Thomas is injured and the Giants become
Right.
buyers, we got to get somebody. We got to.
Oh God, yeah, no.
I'd be
Oh,
like,
yeah,
you're out of here. You're out of here.
No, yeah. If they
Because the
do that,
delusion
then
would be so far.
no,
Like, yeah, if we
no.
buy anything, I think Joe Shane should be fired.
I don't. Oh God, I didn't even think of that way. I don't think they're thinking that. I mean, if
I
they
hope
thought
not,
that way,
but
I would be,
I can't figure out why we're still starting Jones. Like, there's nothing to be gained from it at this point. And I know it sounds, I'm not backtracking because I already said I didn't think he'd be on the team next year. I just thought we would be good enough. But the problem is, I see us scheming things open, and he just can't get it done. So
well,
if scheme is good, then any quarterback can do something in that offense. Why do we need the guy who's $160 million with an injury thing hanging over our heads, and he can't get shit done? 7 points.
Well, you can make the argument. Again, I'm not arguing this way, but I've actually made these points too. His quarterback rating against Cleveland was above 100. His quarterback rating against Washington was above 100, and he had a quarterback rating of 100 over Seattle. I could see them talking themselves into, like I kind of talked myself into, he's starting to get better again. But what really where I was real negative, if you go back and watch these things, was after the Dallas game. I was like, oh, of course the Vikings game, but that goes without saying. But the Seattle game, I mean the Cowboys game, he couldn't and wouldn't both throw the ball down the field. And then what did he do the following week? Twice he threw the ball down the field, and both resulted in big plays. One a 41-yard perfect throw, and another one a 30-yard touchdown. Yay, he threw out. He's learning. Then he comes home and he won't throw the football past 15 yards downfield. And like you said, anyone who's going to play the Giants, why the hell would they be concerned about playing anything down the field?
Right.
It's going to crowd the short areas because Daniel can't or won't. They'll take a risk. They'll say, well, if they do get behind us, he's only like 20% likely to complete the pass down the field anyway. So
Yeah.
we'll take those odds. So we're gonna get up in their face and we're gonna challenge all the short routes. So I can see how they've convinced themselves of this, but again, that if they have, that gets into kind of your Shane question, then this is not the right coaching staff for this team because you're like, they can't evaluate the quarterbacks correctly. So I
Right.
don't know what they're doing. I don't know if they're playing for their jobs at this point, coaching for their jobs at this point. But I've just like we keep repeating ourselves. We've seen enough. You and I don't want to see any more of this. And he can't play at home. And what's the
No,
next
he
game?
can't.
It's a home game. It would be better if we were playing in
I
Philadelphia.
know. I
I
know. I
feel
thought
more
that too.
confident playing in Philadelphia than if you're a Giant season ticket holder at this point, you've got to be pulling your hair out.
So you're a parent. I'm a parent. I equate the QBR piece to this. It's my kid coming home and look, I got a 95 on my homework assignment. Oh, I got a 93 on my pre-study guide. I got a 92 on this review. I got a 71 on the test. That's essentially what we're hanging on all the stuff except for what happens on the actual field in the game.
Well,
You
again,
can't,
he did have. I know you're making qualifications a little bit, but he did play well against Seattle. So
but
again,
again,
not great, but he played well enough to win. So
but you
I'm going to give him that. So,
but
but that,
but everything was perfect in Seattle on the offensive side, and it's still. I agree with you. I'm not going to backtrack because I said the same thing about that game. Look, it
right.
was well, but everything needed to be just right though for it to work, and it did. We got guys open, and he hit them open. We moved from things, and we dictated pace. Right from the get-go, that did not happen, and it looked like Minnesota. It looked like Dallas. So
Right.
again, these are home games, right? And it's
But
a
my
weirdly thing, but even Washington, we should have scored a lot more points than we did. And while yes, Neighbors dropped the ball late, you missed a deep pass where Hyatt was wide open and screaming across the field. You missed it. There's another pass where you threw in Dallas or against Dallas. You threw a couple of long ones. They were too short.
yeah.
You're either too long, too short. When the opportunity to make the play is there, he can't do it.
Well,
When plays are open, when plays are open and things are momentum are happening, we seem to be okay. It's when one little hiccup happens, he's done.
right. But and again, I think I don't want you to misinterpret what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we I'm no longer willing to be lulled into the one or two games he plays well, the hold on hope that he's going to turn it around. So what I'm saying is I don't care anymore
No,
if
I
he
agree.
played well. I don't care if he played well in Seattle because I know that is going to be a one-off. And again, he can't function at all when he's at home. So you're talking about 3 or 4 times a year he may play really well and then may play really well and the rest of the time he plays like shit. So that's not a winning formula. So I'm done. So
Yep.
what I'm saying is not to defend him. I'm saying he did play well in Seattle like he played well in the Minnesota playoff game. The Humphrey Bogart will always have Minnesota playoff game. That didn't resonate with me, and now the Seattle game's not resonating with me. But I am going to still say he played well in both those two games. The bitter clingers out there are going to cling on to those moments, and I'm not clinging on to those moments anymore. I'm past that. I'm just going to give him credit where credit due. I know what you're saying. You're basically saying
No,
we've kind of
I think we're on the same
overvalued
page.
what he did in that game. But
Well, I think you were saying the coaching staff. You were saying they will look at that and
that's the
say,
only thing I can think of.
and
I
that's
mean,
what I'm
I
thinking
agree with
is
you. What are they looking at? I don't know. The only thing
it,
I can think they're looking at is they see these teases. You know, the phrase "coach killer." Daniel Jones he's literally a coach killer because this may be his. If Dabol gets fired, this is going to be yet another coach he's killed. Now
I
they've done
found
it for themselves, but
I found it interesting. There was one thing, and we should switch, and we don't want to
yes,
make
we
these
should.
too. We don't want to make
Yeah,
this too long.
we gotta cut this.
We're
Yeah,
already
yeah.
pushing to an hour. Um, Dayball made a statement that said Daniel Jones is working as hard as he can to be as good as he can, and people were
Yay.
like, but see, that's exactly what other people said, and I'm like, huh.
We're all winners.
See, I didn't take that. I didn't take it that way. I looked at it like Dayball was basically saying he works really hard to be as good as he can be, i.e., this is the best you're going to get from this guy. He works really, really hard. Like,
So then do something. Bench
see,
him.
that's what I'm wondering though, because I don't want to. I don't want to just jump with other people who say Mara's dictating this and whatever. But there is something very odd that I don't understand. We just don't fucking score. We don't score enough points, period. What did Dayball say about this game? We just didn't generate enough big plays in a passing game. But you could say that about every game. Even Seattle, we had a couple of plays, but they weren't consistent. We aren't the dagger into the soul of a 50-yard touchdown pass. We're happy that he completed a 40-yard pass down the sidelines and it went out of bounds for a first down. We didn't score on that pass though. We did on the other one, but that was crossing fields. And again, that play solely counted on the fact that Jones went from read 1 to read 2, and the offensive line gave him forever to throw that long across the field pass. That's not going to happen all the time. Lots of times you're going to be a lot quicker about deciding I got to go somewhere else. He just doesn't do it. So I'm not understanding anymore of what either Daboll's been told you have this job next year. We didn't get the quarterback, but we did get our superstar receiver, and we're going to go get one next year, and you just got to get through. But if that's the case, then the one thing that flies in that face is why is Jones still playing if he can get hurt? That's a big negative in that thing. If that's not the case, and he's coaching for his job, I'm not understanding why you stick with the guy who can't get you in the end zone. So it's a dilemma where both
Unless
sides of
he's
the
using him
equation.
as a unless he's using him as the scapegoat, like I said earlier.
But
Now
how do you?
but
But like you said, how do you divorce yourself from that?
exactly. Plus, that, like I said, you could lose the locker room that way. So they're
Good
damned if
point.
they do, damned if they don't, in a way. But again, as a fan, I don't want. We're repeating ourselves now, but I don't want to see it anymore. I'm done. It's not fun. It's not interesting. I dread it. I don't like watching the games anymore. It sucks, and I know other fans feel that way too. You saw it in the game threads. I'm going to watch the Mets. I'm going to go watch the Yankees. I don't want to watch this shit. And that's where they're at right now. And we warned them. We warned the franchise about this. And
Right.
and this is what's coming. This is what's coming. And we're the old guys. We're
That's
the young people out there aren't watching this stuff. They're losing an entire generation of fans who aren't growing up as Giants fans or aren't passionate about it because they don't want to subject themselves to
they don't even remember the second Eli Super Bowl.
no, they don't, and they
know?
don't. I mean, we're talking 12 years here, and and they think this isn't the 70s or 80s anymore. People aren't going to just come back to them after this. They're being.
No, you're so. I want to jump to a couple other things in just a second. We'll keep it really short on that side, but the three things for me. I think DeVito should be starting, and I'm gonna stick with that. Again, you can argue with me anything you want about it. I'm not making a statement that DeVito's great. I just think that at this point, there's no point in playing Jones, and I don't think there's no point in playing Locke. DeVito gives you somebody to at least cheer for. You hope, and who knows, maybe he sparks enough. If we were to squeak into the playoffs because then great. That's an exciting story, and it's happy, and it's fun, and it's whatever. We'll deal with the offseason when we deal with the offseason. It doesn't change anything. The offseason is going to be we need a new quarterback regardless of what happens, unless DeVito came in and lit it up and just and did a Brock Purdy, which at that point, then you go, okay, we just need to keep giving him more players, and this guy's going to be fine. And he's cheap. But regardless, Jones is not cheap. He's not the future, and he's goddamn fucking boring. So DeVito be the starter. Number 2, I trade Darius Slayton. Number 3, I trade Azeez Ojulari. Those are my 3 for right now of what I would do.
Yeah. Well, imagine if I could go back in time and tell Eric and John before this game that the Bengals would have 7 points at halftime and 10 points with 3 minutes left to go in this game, and we still lost the game. That's what happened. That's what happened. The Giants just find new and fantastic ways to lose. And it's because you said we can't, and we've both said it, we can't score points. And they had an anomaly against Seattle, but here we are back to it's getting worse again. So we've gone from maybe we can get 17, and now it's like we didn't even hit 10. I mean,
and then we get
single
the
digits now.
And what's amazing is we find new and unique ways of doing shit. So the week before, you were very worried about the fact that we were going to have a new kicker coming in here against or a couple weeks before we were going to have a new kicker, and now against Dallas, he was the guy who got all our points. He was
2 games in a
spot
row,
on,
he was perfect. He was
spot on.
perfect. And
And
then
then Shank, and I'm like, are you serious? This
and,
can't
and that
and then
should not be underestimated too. He could have tied that game. The
right.
game could have been tied 10-10, and it's a different game at that point too. That was a really deflating miss. Now, people say, old timers like me will say 47-yard field goals are not gimmies, but the new thing
They are today.
Now they are. Today they are. That's why people look back at the kick, in the Super Bowl when they give Norwood the grief. That was a long kick back then on grass. Right. That was a long kick. I mean, that wasn't a gimme for a team, but
and we had a new punter too. And the new punter was fine. You're like, oh my God, what are we going to do? We just signed the guy the day before. We bring him on the roster. He was fine. And he was the holder. And it wasn't because of the holds. It's because the kicker shanked him.
And the only other thing I want to mention too is, and again, I'm not blaming the defense at all for this loss. You hold Cincinnati to 17 points, you should win the game. However, that 3rd and 18 scramble was a head scratcher. I don't understand the defensive alignment on that play where they had Azeez basically by himself on that side of the line of scrimmage. They were inviting a scramble in that play. I didn't like that. People were focused on man-to-man coverage. I get that, but I don't have a problem with that. It was the lineup that we were so overloaded to one side. The
man-to-man coverage is what allowed it to ultimately be a touchdown. The alignment allowed it to be at least 20 or 30 yards. They did it twice. The first time, Burrow scrambled and picked up a bunch of yards the first time.
Yes, he did. And that was frustrating as hell, too.
Yeah. And so when he did it again and they're lined up, I'm like, what the hell are you doing? So I thought, okay, they're going to loop somebody, from they bunched 3 and 1 on the outside. I thought they're going to loop somebody back into the middle. I know Burrow's, he's not Lamar Jackson, but it's not exactly like you got Dan Marino back there. So once he took off, I'm like, oh my God, you left the entire field open.
And that could have been, we could have pitched a shutout in the first half too. If it hadn't been for that play, but I'm not blaming the defense.
No. And you know what's funny?
I'm just saying they can even get better. I do want to say this because we've gone on too long, but I do want to say this. Remember before the show, I said I would have liked to match up Deonte Banks against Higgins, but I didn't think they were going to do that because they would have to do Jamar Chase. But they did they did it, and it worked. And I think we need to give credit, even though he had a lot of help. I think we need to give credit to Cordell Flott. Has now played his third game in a row that was positive, and he played it against a really, really good wide receiver. And he had that one catch, but he had to follow him forever. That was the one time where our pass rush wasn't getting there. Pathetic. And that was way too long for anyone to cover Jamar Chase. But Cordell Flott played really well. I think our secondary as a whole, you would have taken this net yardage. Burrow only passed for 183 yards. You take that any day of the week. I mean, we probably played their passing game as well as I'd have to go back into the other opponents, but I assume
New England's the only other one. And keep in mind, I think Chase played, but he had just come into camp like 2 days before the game.
Okay.
And Higgins was out.
Oh, yeah.
So Higgins had a hamstring injury. He was out. So they
much
were
different then.
They were a limited team and they lost. They lost that game to the Patriots. That's how bad and how off they were. Since that time, they've been putting up 30 plus points against everybody they played.
Yeah. So I just wanted to say defense is still trending in the right direction, but that one play was bad. I mean, so I don't want to blame them, but that left a bad taste in my mouth. But there were good things to see. Azeez played well. Burns had a really good game. They forced 5 punts after that one touchdown in the first half. There was punt. And again, they held them to 10 points with 3 minutes left in the game. And then that was that
The glaring hole that we have, which we thought was the second corner, is actually the second, I guess, defensive lineman, the guy playing next to Lawrence.
Mm-hmm.
Dexter did not have a great game. Dexter had an okay game for Dexter.
Yeah.
That's the one problem I have when we paid a lot of money to Dexter. He's easy to ultimately take out of the game if you can handle the other stuff one-on-one, or you just take your chances and go one-on-one. You can double and even sometimes triple the guy in the middle. If there's nobody else next to him,
Right.
you can take him out of the game.
Oh, I would still give him that contract, though. I think they got him on a bargain. No,
I hear you. I'm not saying it was wrong,
Yeah.
but what I'm saying is you can't build that with that guy and not have somebody else next to him that can, because what you really need is, you don't need a bunch. We talked about this before, same as an offensive line. I don't need all pros, but if I have an all pro, I need to get guys that are very good at very specific things. We don't have another guy next to him that could just eat up the blockers to keep you from being able to double Dexter.
Well, I've said for a couple months now, our biggest loss wasn't Saquon and it wasn't Xavier McKinney. It was A'Shawn Robinson.
Yeah, agreed.
So if A'Shawn Robinson's on this defense next to Dexter, this is a much different defense. But again, we talked about this a number of times. They'll have to address that in the draft. They just didn't get. They know they have the problem there, and they know they need better corner. Even though Flott and I would say this: Drew Phillips, despite being hurt a couple times this year, he's playing really well too. So we look like we had a home run with Drew Phillips. So again, so the defense played. I just wanted to mention that. I thought the defense played well. I just hate that one play that they gave up. Special teams, that kicker. Oh my God, I don't know what that was. And we'll have to see with that, because Dabol said this week they're going to stick with him unless Graham is healthy. So, and we don't know what's going on.
I got to assume some of that is salary driven. Like, we don't want to. Why do you want to spend more money on another veteran kicker? Like, I mean, honestly, who gives a shit? Like, ultimately, we shouldn't have been in a game that we needed a field goal just to tie the Bengals. You got to make those, but I mean, I don't want to be searching the world to find another kicker, because the fact of the matter is your issue's at quarterback. Right. So, I mean, the kicker, he made 5 the week before. He missed both. It sucks that it happened. You don't throw an interception in the red zone, and we probably have that field goal if we didn't get a touchdown. It was pretty damn close. He shouldn't have missed that one. You took all points away from that ability right there. So anyway, real quick, just a couple of things. I will say I'm still constantly trying to figure out what in the living hell are we doing with our kick return team that we can't seem to get any sensible return ever. We're lucky if we get to the 25, quite frankly. Marset got hurt and then came back later. Then Adoree Jackson was in there, and he literally could have fair caught one that I thought would have get us at least 5 to 8 more yards. Instead, he comes like faking, and I'm thinking, oh, it must be way over his head. It's going to bounce in the end zone. It bounces like 2 yards behind where he was standing, and it gets down deep in our end. I'm like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
But whatever. Overall, I would have to say I thought the defense played pretty darn well. Burns' best game. I'm concerned that he has an injury that people keep talking about after the game. He's really laboring. Tom Coughlin said, and it's a thing that they tried to back off from later on when he was hired, injuries are a cancer. I've already pointed this out on the site before. I'm getting weird 1983 and 2003 vibes that this team, and the record, by the way, after 6 games for both those years, we were 2-4.
Oh yeah, but I don't think that's going to happen. It's happening. Burns has had a groin injury for a few weeks.
Not saying that about Burns though, but I'm saying is in general though, injuries start to pile up when you start piling up losses.
Yeah, but I don't think we've seen that. I don't think anyone's faking injuries right now. With the thing that people didn't understand about Coughlin's comment back then was he was saying people were making business decisions. He didn't come out and say that, but a lot of people didn't understand what he was getting at, and that was a thing. And that's what he was talking about. But I don't get that vibe yet with this team.
But I agree. And I don't think that vibe was there at 2-4 in 83 or in 2003. But when 2-4 suddenly becomes 2-9, that's when it's going to set in. That's what I'm saying is start paying attention. If we lose to Philadelphia and we lose to Pittsburgh, 2 games we certainly could lose. We could also win those games, by the way. Neither one of those teams is unbeatable.
Oh, sure.
But if we
Yeah.
lose both those, now we're 2-6. Now all of a sudden you're like, and then what do we have after that? We have Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, then you have
Commanders are coming
Washington,
up.
then you have
Yeah.
Washington. The
Yeah.
only game after that you could legitimately say we should win, and by the way, it's not a God-given thing anymore now that Andy Dalton's the quarterback, is Carolina. If we freaking lose to Carolina, if we lose all these games through Carolina, Dabol's gone. I think Shane's gone. I think they're a clean house. They can't lose the rest of their games to the bye week. I'll say this. If we lose the rest of the games through the bye, all the way to the bye, meaning we lose to Carolina too, we don't win any of these games, Daboll will be fired during the bye.
Well, you've answered your question on why they may not be changing quarterbacks, because they may still think that Jones gives them the best chance to win these a few more games.
Flawed thinking.
Again, I'm not saying that.
No, I know. I'm just saying that's flawed thinking. Yeah.
And so sometimes fortune favors the bold, and they're not being very bold at this point. But we'll see if they lose this game. If they lose to Philadelphia and they still don't, and Jones plays like he did, and we score 6 points in this game, and they still don't make a quarterback change, then he's made his own. They've made their own bed at this point. So I'm going to end my comments on that note, on that cheery note. Maybe tomorrow we'll learn that they made a quarterback switch. So.
Yeah, we'll see. I think you hit the nail on the head. The big news that we need to pay attention to is Andrew Thomas. What's the deal there? Because he is a franchise left tackle. He is getting paid a ton of money. He's had issues with his lower body already, with the ankle and foot.
Yeah.
I don't want to see that become a recurring problem. We've already had that issue with Evan Neal, who's had multiple lower ankle issues. And because of that, we have yet to see him. Now, at some point, he needs to play.
He might be playing. He might be
our left tackle.
He might be starting on Sunday. We don't know.
Pray to God if that's
Andrew
the case.
Tom, it happens to Andrew Tom. Josh Azudu or Andrew or Evan Neal may be starting on Sunday, so we'll have to see.
So we were gonna, you know what? We broke it down good enough. Here's the fact of the matter: 2020, 2024. Those are two pictures. I could invert them and it'd be the same goddamn thing. So DeVito, trade Slayton, trade Ojulari. That's how I would play this going forward. Comment, please let us know who would you have starting going forward from now on. Do you stick with Jones? Would you put Locke in, put DeVito, and don't give me the crap about you would have gone a different direction before this. I understand that. I'm saying right now, if you're the Giants, what do you do? And I'm curious to see where this goes. I think I know, but I'm curious. So Eric, with that, I think we'll call this an end of our
and we're looking forward to our Philadelphia Eagles preview.
Yeah, that'll be an interesting one. So
we could have been winning all these games. Except the Minnesota game, but coulda, shoulda, woulda, whatever. And welcome to the world of Daniel Jones.
And that's the part that I think someone else argues on the site, that they say that's the argument that management uses. And I did originally, but my argument is starting to now be inside. We could have, if we had somebody else. We were in those games, but I can't say we were in those games because of him, per se.
Right.
I think he was part of it in some of those games. Not all of them.
That's my point. Yeah.
So that's why
I want to see a quarterback.
That's why I want to see somebody else.
Exactly.
Because if you're still in a game and it's a different quarterback, then that tells you it didn't matter who we were playing. Any one of our three would have put us in the game, and then you're just hoping not to make mistakes. And right now, we're hoping to not make mistakes with a $160 million quarterback.
Yeah. And remember, Eagles are going to be out without their tackle.
That's right.
We'll talk about that later. But
so we'll preview that later. So again, subscribe, all that good stuff, and please comment. Let me know who you think would you trade Slayton, and would you trade Ojulari? And if you go Terps, I know you would trade every single person on the team. So with that, we'll catch up with you again. Appreciate you taking the time, and have a good night.